Good morning. Have you ever felt like you're being manipulated to do something? You probably were. There is always a chance that it was all in your head. You just felt like you're being used. But it is not unlikely that someone made use of your emotions to get something they needed. It makes sense. If someone you know personally was able to do that, but did you know strangers often manage to influence you too? It's true. How? Through propaganda and advertising. In this vlog post, we're going to discuss seven types of advertisement propaganda and how it is often used to manipulate your buying decision. The first, card stacking propaganda is an advertiser omits any information that may affect their image negatively and includes just that information that will lure you into the trap. Okay, we might have made it sound little too grim, but it is true. They do essentially influence you to buy the product or service based on the information they have presented you with. How? They make the product appear a lot more attractive than it actually is. Second, name calling, propaganda, the most common between two brands that are similar, well known, and have a loyal fan base. Understandably, they need to lure consumers from the other side to their side. Some examples include Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's, and Burger King, and so on. Third, bandwagon. Bandwagon propaganda advertisers know that it is human nature to not want to be the one left out. They know that if they convince you that everyone else is buying their product or using their service, you will want to jump on the bandwagon too. What do advertisers do with this information? They use it to their advantage. Fourth, testimonial propaganda. Testimonial propaganda advertisers use the testimonials of influencers, authority, figures, or experts in the field to convince you that their product is worth your money. This is mainly because if a famous person or one who has a lot of knowledge and experience in the niche is vouching for it, there has a got there has got to be something that sets it apart. And that is something that makes you go for it, making these kinds of messages some of the most common propaganda advertisements that are used today. Transfer propaganda. If an advertisement uses a national song, the flag of your country, or any other element that awakens the love you have for your country inside of you, your patriotism will take over. You will associate the feeling of love you have for your country with the brand, and that will, of course, improve its image in your eyes. You'll understand this better with some transfer propaganda examples. Sixth, glittering generalities propaganda. The glittering generalities techniques makes us use makes use of fancy words that elicit a positive response or feeling from you. In turn, this feeling is what makes you want to buy the product. Try the service, try the service or become affiliated with the brand. Some examples of these glittering words include hope, change, possibility, justice, and other that give off an extremely positive vibe or hype you up among other things. Seventh, plain folks propaganda. This approach is this approach is increasingly become one of the more effective propaganda devices you can come across today. Many people nowadays crave real experiences. When applied to advertising, this basically means that they want to see how a particular product or service brought value to a regular human being like themselves. In other words, this is quite the opposite technique to testimonial propaganda, where a celebrity, decision maker, or an influencer is trying to tell you to choose something or over the other. Final words. Whether an advertiser makes use of propaganda commercials or a print or a digital advertisement among other things, they're using some sort of technique to manipulate you and influence your buying decisions. This fact remains the same, no matter which propaganda types they use, so be aware, remain careful, and choose wisely. The second topic that we will discuss is types of claims. Claims usually fall into one of three types. Claims of fact. A claims of fact makes an assertion about something that can be proved or disproved with factual evidence. However, keep in mind that the basic quality of claims that they have to be debatable and and offer an assertion about an issue. So a claim of fact for a logical argument cannot simply consist of a statistic or proven fact. It needs instead to focus on an assertion which uses facts to back it up, but for which the evidence might still be debatable. Claims of value. A claim of value argues that something is good or bad, or that one thing is better than another thing. Claims of policy. A claim of policy argues that certain condition should exist, or that something should or should not be done in order to solve a problem. The third topic that we will discuss is the modes of persuasion, often referred to as ethical strategies or rhetorical appeals, are devices in rhetoric that classify the speaker's appeal to the audience. They are ethos, pathos, and logos, as well as the less used kairos. These four persuasive techniques are essential for making any argument compelling. You can use them in a blog post, in a speech, in an essay, or even on your website homepage. Anytime you're trying to persuade your reader to take actions, form a new opinion, or take a big step that will change their life. So, how can we establish trust with readers, prospective customers, or website visitors? First is We can share personal stories that show we have experience with the topic. Second, we can show the other people trust us. Third, we can point to our qualifications. Fourth, we can show we care about our readers or customers. The fourth topic is how are prejudice and bias created? Prejudice and stereotyping. In many cases, prejudices prejudices are based on stereotypes. A stereotype is a simplified assumption about a group based on prior experiences or beliefs. Stereotypes can not only lead to faulty beliefs, but they can also result in both prejudice and discrimination. What are the three types of bias? Three types of bias can be distinguished: information bias, selection bias, and confounding. These three types of bias and their potential solutions are discussed using various examples. What is the difference between bias, prejudice, and stereotyping? Bias is defined as prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. Bias can be seen as the overarching definition of stereotyping and prejudice because it is how we associate traits, usually negative, to a specific group of people. Bias and prejudice. An important skill of critical reading is the ability to detect an author's bias and prejudice. The reason you need to be able to do this, of course, is that bias and prejudice may invalidate an author's claim. There are several ways to detect an author's possible bias and prejudice. For example, the author uses inflammatory language, in the most extreme cases, racial epithets, slurs, and etc. The author consistently makes claims whose larger purpose is to elevate or demean one social, ethnic, national, religious, or gender group as compared to another or all others. The author consciously presents evidence that serves to the only one side of an event or issue, purposefully withholding or ignoring information that may shed the opposing view in a more positive light. The author manufactures, falsifies, and or dishonestly cites evidence in order to present his or her case in a more positive light. Note that even secondary sources written by reputable authors are not immune to bias and prejudice. Be sure to carefully examine any author's premise, argument, and methodology to ascertain whether he or she has consciously or unwittingly pursued 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 the above strategies. You are even more likely to encounter prejudice and bias in primary sources, newspaper editorials, political cartoons, and private sources such as letters, diaries, etc. are often blithely biased, as they are generally intended for a specific audience that is assumed to share the author's view. On this, see also fiction. Finally, beware of presenting bias and prejudice views of your own or manufacturing dishonest evidence. When writing, we seek to avoid the pitfalls of the four negative strategies described above on which. Thank you. I'm Sean Glide Leonardo presenting. Thank you.